Coffee and rain. Recipe for the perfect morning. So today I thought that I'd share with you a little tool that I've been using for the past couple of years to help me in retaining the things that I read, because if you don't know already, I do read a lot of books, and like most of y'all, I consume a lot of content on YouTube and on podcasts and all of that sort of stuff. And so I found myself running into this issue where I would consume a lot of content, but then I would get to the end of it and think, wow, that was amazing. They had some amazing points. The content was really spot on, and there were just things in there that they said that really just grasped me. But then, you get to the end of it and you can't remember 95% of what you just watched. And so it became like this dilemma for me, where I would take all this time, investing in a book or somebody's, hour, 2-hour podcast, and then get to the end of it, feel inspired, and then the next day, completely forget everything that I had just read. And so I was looking up different ways on how to retain information better, especially in a world where we are constantly bombarded with, come here. They're getting big. I made their wall like super tall, but somehow they still managed to jump to the top. So they're fixing to move out into their permanent home, which will be a chicken coop within the next week. So not too much longer of them being a little escape artists, but put her back. Anyways, what was I saying? Oh yeah, about retaining information on the books or podcasts or whatever that I listen to. I was trying to look up different ways to be able to retain that information. And one of the things that I came across was this little thing called the Commonplace book. And I really liked the concept of how it worked. And so I decided to try it out, and now I've been doing this for I think just about 2 years now. And it has definitely been a blessing to me, going back and reading the things that I have input into the book. Unfortunately for this thing we can call a commonplace book, it's relatively uncommon. There's not that many videos on it. So I thought I'd make a video to help explain exactly what a commonplace book is, the benefits of actually keeping one, and how to keep one. I'll also disclose a bonus tip you should try before creating your own. So what exactly is a commonplace book? The Commonplace book has been a powerful tool used by people for centuries, but it didn't actually become popular until the 16th, 17th centuries, around there. And this was because of the invention of the printing press. And now people had a lot more access to media, such as newspapers, articles, books, and the like. And people started to realize that though they were able now to take in content like water, their minds could only digest and retain so much of that information. Does that dilemma sound familiar? Thus, to kind of remedy this issue of memory loss, the Commonplace book was born. So basically what a commonplace book is just a little notebook or journal. You write down a bunch of different quotes that you gather from different sources, just a book here that you're reading, or an article that you're reading, or a podcast that you're listening to, or whatever the content may be. And if you find something interesting, or something that's thought-provoking, or maybe even something that's important that you might want to use for later, you just record it in this book. There's a whole bunch of different ways how people actually decide to design the way that they put together the Commonplace book. I'll show you mine when we go over how to actually put one together for yourself. But the cool thing about it is you can make it your own. You can design it however you want. If you want to do it in categories of topics, then you could do it that way. Or if you want to buy certain books, then you could just take quotes specifically from that book and put it into a category. Or you could just put them all together without any rhyme or reason, just quotes that you thought were interesting. By writing these things down, we can now consume large amounts of content and still retain the substance, which is something that I found to be quite valuable, especially in our day and age where we consume a lot of content. So you can probably already see how this applies to us today, but there are 3 main points that I think really hit home why everyone, I think, should have a commonplace book. The first is that, as I said before, with all the content that we consume today, it's a great way to help us retain all of this information a whole lot better, and not just by writing it down, and keeping it in the book, but it also helps our brain to retain it naturally. It is said that when you actually take the time to write something down, you are much more likely to remember it, and I have found that to be very true. A lot of the times I just take notes, whether listening to a sermon or listening to a video, not so that I will go back and actually like read the notes because I hardly ever do, but it actually helps me in remembering the things that were taught during that time frame. It's almost like that odd phenomenon where they told you in school to where like if you had a hard time memorizing something, then just chew a piece of gum while you're studying, and then when you go to take the test, chew the same gum again, and it'll help you remember it. That's kind of the same thing when you write something down. It helps bring those things back to memory whenever you need them. The second, and I think is a very important point, is it causes us to observe more deeply with what we're consuming. It also helps us to find applications to what we are reading instead of just skimming through a page or casually listening to a YouTube video while we're doing something else. It really helps us to listen and hone in onto what's the substance of what I'm listening to and why am I spending my time on this specific piece of content. It causes you to start looking for things that you otherwise would have missed. And furthermore, when you write this stuff down, it actually, takes time to write these things. If you're not, assuming you're not doing it on a computer, which for me personally, I don't recommend. And I'll go over that later when I show you how I design my own Commonplace book. But it does take time to actually write these things down. So when you're writing it, you can continue to think about what you're actually writing down. And I think it just becomes so much more valuable to you when you're able to sit there and meditate upon what you're reading or what you're listening to. And the third is it's future-proof. Like, it doesn't expire, it will never go away. It's always recorded in these books. So 50 years from now, if I wanted to refer back to a book that I read back when I was 22, I could open up my Commonplace book and look through the different quotes that I took and apply it to whatever issues or problems, situations that I have come across. And then what's also great about it is I can pass it down to future generations. So my kids and their kids and whoever, happens to come across my Commonplace book can open it up and read through the different quotes that I have found throughout my lifetime and gleaned from it, which I personally think is neat. It's like planting a tree that another person can sit under. So it's not just helpful for me and my pilgrimage, but it also will help future generations. So now that we've kind of gone over the benefits of actually keeping a Commonplace book, I'll now show you how to keep one and how I've actually designed and laid out my own so that you can kind of get an idea for how you can design yours. So this is mine. So me personally, I find it better to stick them into different categories. For example, like here, I've got a whole section on who God is, or any sort of quotes about him. Here's one. The modern scientist has lost God amidst the wonders of his world. We Christians are in real danger of losing God amidst the wonders of his word. And that is from The Pursuit of God by A.W. Tozer, page 13. So obviously, again, like I said, you can do it however you want to. I just find that this is the best way for me to come back and find specific quotes that I'm looking for. If I was ever to do like a project or whatever where I needed some quotes on God, or needed something on family or business, I have all of that. I have all that categorized. Now, the only thing that I found to kind of be an issue with this is if you get too specific, then you can end up with a lot of different categories. So honestly, if I was to do it again, I would kind of keep my categories more broad. That way I wasn't having so many different topics to sift through. But then I also started doing something else where I started categorizing things via book. So like if a book had a lot of things that were good in it, I would just dedicate an entire section to that book. So for example, here's Chesterton's Orthodoxy. I've just committed an entire section to his book specifically, and I continue on the next page. Now you can keep these specifically just quotes, or you can take like little notes about like what you kind of learned from that quote or what you got out of that quote. There are plenty of people who do that. I just wanted to keep mine just strictly quotes, so that way I could just go back and read them raw. But whatever method you do is completely fine. I also found that I didn't have that much space when I was writing these things down, because some of these quotes are long, like you can see this one. So it just wasn't feasible for me to add any sort of notes. But again, that's up for your interpretation. So really, what you want to do is you just want to save anything that is important or jumps out at you, or something that's just really, really thought-provoking. so that you can refer back to it. No matter what it is. It can be on any sort of topic that you want to, or whatever sort of content you're consuming. Just, take notes and write down the quotes here so that you can refer back to them later. I will say one thing though, just to kind of think of your future self. When you do take down a quote, make sure that the context is understood, even if that means that you've got to go back and write a little bit more so that when you read it again, it makes sense. Then lastly, just make sure that you got your references, who the author was, where you found it, and then what page it's on. So that way, if you want to go back to the book, you can actually go and quote it. Or if you wanted to make a video or write a book or something, you can easily refer to the source that it came from. I've also taken quotes from videos. For example, I have this one: if you want to read 100 books in a year, you will run the risk of not understanding a single one of them. And in that sense, you are developing a second degree of ignorance. And instead of writing, the book and stuff, since it's not a book, it's a video, I wrote down the video title, How to Read Deeper, The Importance of a Commonplace Book. And that was by R.C. Walden. And then I write the time, so it was right at a minute. That way I can refer back to the video. This applies to any sort of content that you happen to come across. It's really the most important thing is just make this your own. Enjoy the process. I promise you that it is a huge blessing in the future when you come back to it and read these quotes that you've either forgot about or you might want to revisit. It is definitely worth the time writing these things down. And lastly, I promised you guys a bonus tip that I actually learned after I had started my Commonplace book, and what I wish I knew before I had actually started, is make sure that you have the layout and design that you like already figured out before you start one, because after you've started it, it's pretty much set in stone. Obviously you can change it, but then that kind of defeats the aesthetics, and then it kind of makes it confusing when you've got a certain layout on this page and then another layout on the other page. So I would recommend just having a few practice runs first. Just take a book that you're reading, watch a video, and then just take down specific quotes that just jump out at you. Kind of figure out what the best layout for you is going to be. That way when you actually do purchase a Commonplace book or you start one, you already have an understanding of how you're going to lay things out. Because for me personally, I have a little bit of OCD, so for me it's important to kind of understand what I'm doing it before I actually take the plunge and write something on the pages. And in case you wanted to practice this art, but you didn't have any book that you were specifically reading or video that you were going to watch next, you can check out my last video, Burning the Boxes, and you can kind of watch through that and take a few quotes and kind of get your design all set out. And at the same time, kind of learn about what my channel is about if you're new. But if you enjoy this video, please leave a like, it helps me out a lot. Glorify Yahweh, burn the boxes. See you next time.